Hi everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres. And this morning I was sorting seeds. And I thought about some of the things I've mentioned in some of my videos lately. And one of those things is plant families. I know it's a big thing for a lot of people to compost, but you have to be careful with composting. Do I compost at all? Yes, I do. Do I compost everything out of the garden? No way. For instance, right now, my squash plants, all in the cucurbit family obviously, and my cucumber plants are full of downy mildew. Just absolutely full. And probably 10 other kinds of fungus too. I'm not going to compost any of that. That will go to the burn pile, or in our case this year, since we can't burn yet because we'd catch the whole state on fire because we're in a drought, we will probably eventually wind up hauling it to the dump. The reason being, we cannot guarantee that we can get our compost pile really hot. We do not have a source of fresh manure, and we do not have a good source of what they call green manure, so lawn clippings, things like that. What that means is our compost tends to be a cool compost. It eventually decays, it eventually breaks down, it eventually turns into something useful, but it doesn't get hot enough to kill seeds, and it doesn't get hot enough to kill fungus and other sort of stuff like that. So rather than risk reinfecting healthy beds by adding compost that we've made ourselves that contains some sort of disease organism, we just toss it. Would I prefer to have a really hot compost pile? Sure. Who wants to pay for something you don't need to pay for? But for now, that's just not on the list. So we make sure that we get rid of any potential disease sources. So that means before I plant those tomatoes into that container that had cabbage in it, I make sure that all the plant debris is off the top, all the leaves, that sort of stuff. I yank out the main stem where the cabbage had been. I don't worry about the teeny tiny little roots. They're dead. We don't have root knot nematodes or clubroot, which is a type of fungus that affects the roots of cabbage, or anything like that. So I'm not concerned about a soil-borne organism like that might affect tomatoes. I don't think they do either, but I'm not worried about it because we don't have that problem. When I use a pot over again, say you're sitting there going, okay, it's nice for you because you've got a bigger garden to be able to say, okay, I planted tomatoes in this bed this year. Next year, I'm going to plant legumes, something in the pea or bean family. Okay, you're a small gardener, you've got a little patio, you've got 4 or 5 pots out there, or maybe just one, and you want to grow tomatoes in that pot every year. Well, what do? You amend your soil. And what I mean by that is, over the course of a summer, especially in hotter climates, you'll see the soil level in that pot actually go down. Where's it going? Well, it's actually rotting away. It's actually being eaten up by a combination of bacteria and all kinds of other critters in there, the roots of your plants. It's taking the nutrition out of the soil, and you actually wind up with less soil at the end of the year than you started at the beginning of the year. So how do I fix that? Get yourself some good organic fertilizer. I recommend getting a little bit of bone meal, maybe a little bit of fish emulsion. Now the fish emulsion is going to smell like you've been cleaning fish, but what you can do is you can kind of revitalize the soil. You can also add some new soil into it. Get yourself some good potting mix and mix it in there and stir it around good with some bone meal and stuff, and then make sure you fertilize it with some fish meal once you've got your I mean, your fish meal or fish emulsion. I used to be able to get fish meal. I don't seem to be able to get it anymore. Where we live, I can get fish emulsion. Oh, it is nasty stuff. It's, how can I describe this politely? It's brown. It stinks like rotten fish. You only need a tablespoon or two in a multiple gallon container of water. And it'll make the whole place smell like the ocean at low tide. But that's okay. It doesn't hang around for more than a day or so. And wow, it's a great source of nitrogen and stuff. Read the labels on your fertilizer. See what you're actually adding. Because fish emulsion is high in nitrogen, but very low in some other things. Bone meal is not so high in nitrogen, but it has other things in it that are handy. You want to kind of balance that out, so that you know that if your one plant has sucked up all this nutrient, then the next one might need that and it's not going to be there. That's one of the reasons that we change up family groups in pots and in flower beds and all that other kind of stuff, because if you're always removing the same nutrient, at some point you're going to get diminishing returns. At some point, your plants are just not going to be as healthy. You'll be frustrated because you've put all this effort in. You've bought the seeds, you've done this, you've done that, you've done the other thing. I've got friends who have said to me, wow, my garden beds used to be really good. They just don't seem to be working anymore. And I'm like, well, have you added compost? Oh yeah, I added 1 inch of compost on top. That's not enough, especially in a hot climate like ours. The compost is literally cooked out of the soil every summer by the heat. The bacteria and stuff is chewing and eating and spitting it out 10 times faster than it would be, say, if you were up in Massachusetts or someplace cold near the Canadian border. So if you live in a hotter climate, you have to add more nutrition in the form of compost every year than you would in a colder climate. And it's important, as I mentioned before, the alliums, for instance, the onions, are heavy feeders. You got to know that. You have to know, what's going on. Otherwise, you'll be sitting there going, gee, I planted all these onion sets that I bought at the tractor supply store, and they grew, they were 1 inch in diameter when I planted them, and now at the end of the summer they're 2 inches in diameter and they look crummy. Didn't fertilize them enough. It's kind of amazing, especially in our area, how infertile the soil is. Sometimes it's because the nutrition is not available, because we are so alkaline that those nutritious minerals in there are actually bound up by the alkalinity of the soil. But sometimes you've just plain used it up, or the plants have that you've planted there. So you need to consider adding in stuff. I have switched to using, I will top dress with things like that. I save my coffee grounds and my tea leaves and all that stuff. That all goes out there. It's just more organics you're adding in. We add compost every year. We try and top dress every bed, and not just 1 inch, but 3 inches, and stir it in, so that you've got this really friable soil that will absorb the moisture and have lots of air in there so that the roots can wiggle their way through and search out nutrition. There are certain plants that are known for specifically deep diving and pulling nutrition up from farther down in the soil than is commonly available. Sunflower is one of those. So you could plant sunflowers in an area and they will put down serious roots, dive all the way down there, bring it up, and then basically use it to some extent, but leave the rest of it in the soil around where their roots are, in the form of the little hairs and stuff like that. Plants like sorghum, Sudan grass, and let me see where the other one go. Oh, sun hemp and vetch and clover. These are all things you can grow to improve the quality of your soil. Some of them are known for getting their roots down there and breaking up heavy clay soils. Others are known for deep diving. There are certain types of radishes that can be grown that put down real serious spikes, and then when you till them up and everything else, and you have to till if you're going to do this kind of thing. When you till them up, that nutrition is returned to the top layer of soil where you're planting your plants. Most plants that we grow in our gardens can be grown in a pot that is only 12 inches deep. And I have seen people do all kinds of silly stuff where they think they can grow in a 55-gallon drum, and then they don't understand why their plants are not doing well. It's because most plants only use that much soil. Are there any that can go down farther? Yeah, actually the cabbage family can go down quite far. They can grow these massive root structures. But that's normally in a field environment where they really need that in order to get all the nutrition. If you're top dressing them with a good organic, slow release fertilizer, and you did something positive to your soil in the first place by adding compost and bone meal and stuff, you will need to add more fertilizer over the course of the summer. If you notice that your plants are just kind of stalled, give them something else to eat. Plants need things too. So you need to learn to watch. But knowing what family a plant lives in, comes from, not lives in, will help you have a clue. For instance, grasses, corn, heavy nitrogen feeders. If you don't give them enough nitrogen, they don't make. Allium, same thing. You don't give them enough nitrogen, they don't make. Legumes, you give them too much nitrogen, you wind up with a big bushy plant and no peas or beans. Nightshades, they need nitrogen. They are fairly heavy feeders, but if you give them way too much nitrogen, assuming you just plain don't burn them and kill them, they're just not going to grow well. And then you get into the micronutrients, and that's a whole other video unto itself. But I hope this helps. I hope this gives you some clues. Is it possible to not rotate your crops? Sure. There are some people who have such wonderful soil and such disease-free environments that they barely have to do anything to grow a garden. But to be blunt, that's not most of us. Most of us have problems with bugs, with funguses, with nematodes, all kinds of stuff, with a lack of nutrition. And knowing what family your plant is in will help you with that. You can go to a lot of university sites that have good agricultural programs. University of Davis, California is one of them. University of Georgia has got a program like that. I think University of Louisiana. I mean, almost every state has their ag programs for their state, and they focus on plants that are commonly grown agriculturally in their state. They will have article after article after article, and a lot of them are also being helpful to the average gardener. So they'll have great up-close pictures of different types of disease problems and all that sort of stuff to help you figure out what's wrong if you're having a problem. Is it a disease or is it a nutritional deficiency? You know, when my cucumber leaves start to get a little on the yellow side, I hit them with a little bit of Epsom salts and a little shot of nitrogen, and they come right back. Okay, they could be short on magnesium, and they might need some nitrogen. Go for it. There's things you can do, and usually you can tell within a week if you've pushed the right button on a plant. Not always easy to tell nutritional deficiencies from diseases, but got to start somewhere. And we all don't know all of it. I mean, even the pros have to call in friends sometimes to try and figure out what's going on. I'm busy talking to a professional grower right now, trying to figure out what went wrong with some of our tomatoes. And to be honest, I don't think she has a clue. But I'm going to send her some more pictures and we'll see if she can be a little less glue-free. So until next time, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to come back because we're working on planting our fall and winter garden right now. We will be growing all winter in the greenhouse. We had planned to grow a lot more in the yard this year, but because of the infiltration of the local deer population, we've decided it's just not worth the effort. We're going to focus on the greenhouse instead, And we're going to be building some things for next year to help us grow in several different places around here and hopefully keep the deer and other critters out. So until next time, bye.